Hi, and welcome to this new episode of In Search for Courage and Meaning. I'm Abi Keene, a healer, a body worker, a coach, and mainly a human being in search of courage and meaning. And today, to explore some of this topic with me is Lynsie McKeown. Thank you so much for joining me
Oh,
today.
I'm so excited.
And what would you like us to know about you?
Well, I'm pretty much an open book. I think that what's interesting is over the years, when I'm share things on social media or in my newsletters or in the classes and workshops I teach, people are always coming up to me and saying, "I can't believe you just shared that. That's so personal." I'm like, "How can you share that? Don't you feel vulnerable?" And most of the time, I say, like, it just comes through me, and I just share the truth that wants to be spoken in that moment, and I have this ability to do it without being apologetic for it, or it just feels comfortable for me because that is what needs to come through at that time. So um and I'm also one that, you know, I could tell you what I do, like all my titles and labels, but I'm actually a person that kind of like doesn't like the labels. I always want to do this,
Uh-huh.
because I'm constantly growing and evolving. And um, when you put a label on me, I feel like it's going to be torn off in probably 3 months, anyways. So I'm an evolving human being, just like you, in search of courage and meaning and purpose and
Mhm,
pleasure and just expanded awareness. And how I do that is always morphing and changing.
mhm. Yeah, and, thank you for that, and, um, I love how you describe yourself as an open book and how to some extent, it seems like at this point, vulnerability is, you're comfortable sitting there and exposing, but I have a feeling it took work to get there.
Oh,
Um Yeah,
yeah.
because this is a very scary place for most of us. And so I'm kind of wondering in that, in that um like um so on that topic, what does courage mean to you in your life, and how have you met it in your life to have that sense of here I am, this is me.
Yeah, what does courage mean to me? Gosh, and that's changed as well as I've matured my understanding of myself. Um, Courage right now means to me is following my heart's guidance system.
Mm,
Um, and it's taken a while to understand what the voice of my heart sounds like and to trust her. But it takes courage every single time when I hear um a clear guidance to do something or to say something or to change directions or trajectories in my life, to do that and to follow it takes great courage, because we're human beings and we're designed to for survival, and survival means we need to be safe, and
yeah.
safety means to stay in the known. But it takes great courage to step into the unknown over and over and over again, and realizing that it's in the unknown is where the magic happens, where the transformation happens, where the healing happens, where the beauty of new growth is seated.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's just like, okay, have the courage to listen again and again and again, even because most of the time you're, I mean, I don't know about other people, but for me, like, I get some information that comes through and it's really soft and it's subtle and it's only one little piece of a huge picture. And I have to
Mhm.
be willing to go on that one piece of information without having all the other pieces, and be like, it's okay because I'll find another piece when I step in.
Yeah, you
Another one.
have no idea what doors open once you take that one
Yeah.
little step of yes.
And also the fact that when, oftentimes when I step in, I'm realizing that I'm closing the door on something else. Because once I
Yeah.
step in, this is the path of a spiritual seeker, is when you step in and onto this path, they don't tell you. I'm gonna tell everybody right now. Once you do it, you're on it. You're just compelled to keep moving forward, and there's really no turning back. It's like you cross this invisible barrier, and it can be hard, it can be scary, but you're on it, and you're going to stay on it. I mean, I guess you could sit down in the middle of the path and be like, I'm not going anywhere and I'm done. But I think if you really are paying attention to your heart, she's going to pick you back up and give you the courage to keep going.
Right, right. And it sounds like there's two steps here. I mean, a lot more, but there's first, like, even learning to listen to the heart. Like, just that in and of itself, because a lot of us, it's buried under so many layers. So even know how to recognize that this is a different voice than, the head, the doubting mind, the, whatever, but that there's a different kind of vibration there, and it sounds different. So even to recognize that within it feels so important and big. And then, as you say, like, now that I heard it, am I going to ignore it, or am I going to say yes to it no matter how scary this next step is for me?
Yeah, absolutely. Or you're going to be like, how when you call your cat, the cat heard you, but he just sits there with his back to you, and you're like calling his name, and like, I don't hear you. I don't hear you. I don't want to listen.
Yeah.
That's sometimes like how I feel sometimes when I hear something. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to go out there and do this next scary thing. I've already done a lot of those this year. Can I just like relax and just be here and curled up in the sun for a while? And but then I was like, no, like, okay, let's go. Let's stretch ourselves and step out and explore again and see what happens. And you're right with the, I am not perfect at this by far. I mean, I'm getting better every day with practice, and oftentimes I catch myself in my head again. I'm like, oh, there's that voice again, and it's pushing, it's criticizing, it's shouldn't on me.
Well said.
And so I'm like, okay, and then I catch myself. And I'm catching myself over and over again.
Right. And that's the practice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Would you mind sharing how this has played in your life? That kind of courage and stepping into the big unknown?
Gosh, there's so many stories. Well, one of my favorite, because this is just testament to the practice itself and the guidance system, is that, I was in relationship after relationship after relationship with men, and it always ended badly. Usually they would cheat on me or lie or abandon me in some way. And I just, got really clear on the type of man I wanted to have in my life. And I sat down and I wrote down page after page of like the relationship that I wanted. And, and I took this to my practice, spiritual practice. And, I was single for a really long time, but I was like, I am not going to negotiate on these anymore. This is what I really want. My friends were like, oh, you're too picky. I'm like, no, I'm clear.
Okay. Yes.
I'm very clear. And I'm going to put a stake in the ground, and I'm going to hold steady for that one special person. And then I'm doing all these, workshops and trainings, and I kept getting these messages that were coming in. I was doing some healing work around my relationships with men, and specifically, I was like, I just want to have a really healthy relationship with a man. And I had this clear message come in. I was sitting outside, and the sun was setting over this beautiful summer field, and you could see the grasshoppers and the butterflies as the sun is setting and highlighting the grass. And I remember hearing, love is love. And I'm like, okay, and don't laugh at me. You're probably gonna laugh. But I was like, what does that mean?
Well, sometimes the things that feel like the most obvious are, baffling. I mean, sure, love is love. What does it mean?
What does it mean? And then I went to another workshop weeks late or months later, and my teacher was like, okay, like, we're in deep meditation. He's like, what is your purpose? Like, what is, like, why are you here in this lifetime?
Hmm.
And it said, and I had this another clear message that says to know all forms of love. I'm like, what does that mean? And here I, and I was kind of in this kind of sort of relationship with this guy, and I'm trying to make it fit. I'm doing all these things to get his attention, and and working out super hard so I could be super fit, and trying to, follow, sending him all these messages to keep his attention. It was a lot of work. And yet at the same time, and spending time with this amazing friend of mine. And then I realized it took a long time, I guess relatively short period of time, but it took a while to understand that this other person who happened to be a female was my person.
Hmm.
And she was just sitting there waiting for me for months. I'm telling her
Wow.
all these things, like, what is, like, I heard this message that love is love, and all that. She's like, she wanted to tell me, but she's not going to tell me. Because she wanted me to find out for my own truth. and have
Mm-hmm.
and I realized, wow, I had to have the courage to step into this relationship. And when I did, I found that journal. Oh, I don't know, like, before we moved in together, I found the journal. I was going through it. I was like, everything that I wanted was there except the pronoun.
Oh, wow. I love it.
And we had a long conversation. It's like, I don't know if I can be in a relationship with a woman. I have no idea. I identified as heterosexual my whole life, never had
Mm-hmm.
any interest in women. But this, I recognized love.
Yeah.
Like, I recognized what love felt like, and the love that I wanted in my life. It just came in a completely different package than I had kept, myself kind of in.
Yeah.
And so when I allowed myself to go into that unknown, it was scary yet exciting, because I felt that love. Everything opened up in a way.
Wow.
And when I say everything, because I opened up to that new perspective, other things in my life started to open up.
Hmm.
My purpose became clear in my life, the work that I wanted to do, how I wanted to be in relationships with other people started to come through more clearly. And I'm like, oh, because I just needed to be willing to step into this big, scary unknown so that other information could come in.
What a beautiful, beautiful story. I mean, just the courage to recognize something that it's almost like you couldn't see it because it was not in your vocabulary even. But like the courage to be open-minded enough to recognize it and step into it, which is really, I mean, so much courage to not see ourselves in a rigid way, like this is how I am, this is who I am, this is what I do, rather than it being a mystery and an exploration. But I also love what you said, how like when you open that, other things came in as well.
Mhm. Yeah. Because, in yoga, we talk about these four desires or four aims of the soul.
Hmm.
And, one is spiritual liberation and connection. Another is like stability and finances and health. Another is purpose and the meaningful work you're meant to do in this world that will uplift yourself and others. But another one is pleasure. And I kept denying myself pleasure for a really long time because I was so focused on spiritual liberation and purpose and money and security. And it's like when I opened up and the other things weren't happening, like I wasn't, my really tapping into my fullness of who I could be in my work, and my finances were trickling, and I was getting so frustrated in my practices. And then when I opened up to the pleasure of this like really authentic love and let that come in, all the other ones were fed.
Right.
I was like, wow, I'm having more fun. I'm having deep, meaningful conversations and connection, and just enjoying the pleasure of being in relationship and all that brings in. And then it helped me become, bring in more of the pleasure of relationship to myself. And of course, when you're in like, oh, I'm more fully myself now. And that's not to say you have to have someone else to help you get there, because I was doing all the
Hmm.
other things. But I had been denying
Yeah.
that piece for such a long time. Even though I wanted a meaningful relationship, I was like, I wasn't willing to allow the meaning of pleasure to be in its fullness, that could feed all the other areas.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you hit something important because I think for a lot of women, pleasure, joy, fun.
You
What
know
are
what
you
I
talking
said?
about?
Like, I did this meditation one time about deciding, like, when it gave us clarity on like which area of those four desires was missing. And again, I got this clear message. It was the pleasure. And the first thing out of my mouth of that meditation was like, I don't have time for that. I
Exactly.
don't have time for that. And then I was like, I did the meditation wrong. I'm going to do it again
Yeah. So now I'm gonna work even harder.
to get a
And
different message.
yeah, and so yeah, and I see that, it's definitely a culprit for a lot of us because I think we associate it with indulgence
Mm,
um and then we don't even know what that means to us. Like, what is fun for me? What is pleasurable for me? I mean, we don't even ask the question. And so I'm wondering, kind of want to take it a kind of a full circle ish and tie it into your work with the divine feminine.
mhm.
And I know you have a group, and I know you have teachings around the divine feminine, and I wonder if you can tie that experience of stepping into the unknown, of realizing how pleasure is lacking in your life and kind of not giving it credit, like as though it's not even important,
Yeah.
because there's work to be done, you know.
Yes.
So how does that tie into your teaching?
Yeah. So that there's work to be done, that because you do that. And then I also, whenever I'm talking to you about things and I get that kind of masculine approach, my hands do this.
Yeah.
That's a masculine approach. Like, we have to do this, we have to get work done, or we're not going to succeed, or our life will fall apart, or we're not going to have money, or we're not going to be able to support other people in our lives. That's a very strong masculine approach that has now become almost toxic in our culture. It doesn't mean that the masculine isn't important, but it's been overfed for so long, it's created toxicity. Like, even like when you overfeed yourself, you're going to create a toxicity in your body. And so, and
Mhm.
we've been feeding ourselves the wrong stories for such a long time that we believe them to be true, that we have to do things this way or we might die,
Yeah,
or we're not safe.
right.
But the divine feminine, what she teaches us is that there's power in the unknown, that in stepping into the darkness, there's actually great beauty and transformation and healing and insight that can happen. And if we even think about this, the masculine is associated with the sun and the doing, and the divine feminine is associated with the darkness and the moon. And what have we been taught our whole lives about the darkness? Oh, it's scary.
Yeah,
It's not safe. If you go into the darkness, you might be hurt. There are,
yeah.
things in the darkness that want to hurt you. And that's actually not true. It's in the darkness that we find our power, and
Right.
we actually find a freedom to plant deep seeds deep into the soil so that they can take root and then
Mhm.
be nourished by the sun. And so the divine feminine, the work that I am doing, I'm still learning because I've been so we're all been indoctrinated into a patriarchal view of this doing and achieving and accomplishing. And so it's unraveling that and not letting it go, but unraveling it so that it can be a more supportive aspect of the masculine, but allowing the divine feminine to really be nurtured and come fully forward, and understanding that the divine feminine is not just soft or compassionate or loving, but she is powerful in her ability to create. Like,
Mhm.
she is the one that is responsible for creation
Yeah.
itself. And that doesn't mean just a creation of another human being, but a creation of an idea and new ways of doing things in our life. And if we want our personal lives or the world that we're seeing around us to be different, then
Mhm.
we need to have the perspective of the divine feminine, because she is the one that can pull from those unknown realms and bring in insights from there instead of just the boxed and confined way that we've always done it. She's the one that's going to teach us how to do things in a way that is very different, that can be more nurturing and compassionate and loving, yet powerfully creative at the same time. And that is why it's so important for us to awaken those aspects within us if we want a new paradigm that is more balanced between the masculine and the feminine, where both are honored and not, and neither one are toxic. Like the toxic feminine is when we're allowing ourselves to be, confined, or, really pulling ourselves so deeply inward that we're not able to do anything. Our own power has been put out, so to speak. And so that's the work that I'm really passionate about doing. Like, okay, let's bring this part of ourselves forward that's been kind of denied or overlooked or neglected because we feel like it's, we're not as worthy, or if we do, that's labeled as self-care.
Right.
But it's not, it's about really tending to our souls.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing you say. That ultimately it's the spiritual work. It's the spiritual journey of coming back home in a world where we always gush out of ourselves, and do things and achieve things and associate out, and what you're saying is like how to call ourselves back in, kind of trusting, not in the going forward, but in almost in the surrendering backwards and inward, and like the difference between inner and outer, conscious, subconscious, higher, lower, something that, you know that is, yeah, sort of that quiet pause, place of being, of isness, for lack of a better word, is what I'm hearing you say, like calling us back. I guess you said the word soul.
Yeah, it's deep. It is deep soul work.
Hmm.
And the feminine can teach us how to be guided by our hearts, because really the heart holds more power than the mind does. We think it's the mind because we think our minds are where the action is, which in some instances, yes, that's true, but it's the heart that has a greater electromagnetic frequency than the mind. And they've done studies on this that show that it's, somewhere between, I get this backwards, but I think electrically it's 100 times stronger than the mind, or 500 times, and then 5,000 times stronger magnetically. So it's the heart that has all this power. And then the mind is just there to be in service of the heart. Because then the mind can be like, okay, now we know what we're meant to do. Let me go do it.
Hmm.
And so when we tap into that great wisdom of the heart, we can, and stay aligned with that, then we can say, okay, mind, come in, help me analyze this and figure out the steps that I need to do in order for me to, bring forth this thing that wants to be birthed from me.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yes. And so I'm wondering, kind of to bring it to a close, um, if you had this one thing that you can help people understand, like a message or something that you like, a gift that you can give them
Mm.
to help them in life, for their life, for themselves,
Mm-hmm.
what would it
Wow.
be?
Just one?
I know, right?
I feel like
What would you
that's the
want them
big
to
Christmas
know?
gift. Okay, get all these little Christmas gifts, but what's the one big gift? One thing. It's not as scary stepping into the unknown as we've been taught that it is, and that it's worthwhile. That actually staying in your confined way of doing things for an extended period of time actually is what's wearing you down,
Mm.
is actually what is creating a life that doesn't feel lustrous and beautiful and regenerative. But it's in the unknown that you can act, and the willingness to go there where magic can happen, where you can reconnect to your sense of awe and wonder for this life, which is really hard when we get, past 20. Oftentimes it's like, okay, our adult lives start to wear us down because we have that constant sense of doing and doing things in a particular linear way.
Yeah.
Stepping in that unknown and expanding yourself outward, you expand yourself into realms that you never even knew existed. And there you start to uncover and to rediscover magic and wonder that's always been there. It's just waiting for you to have the courage to step in.
Yeah. Like claiming your birthright.
Exactly. Claiming your birthright.
Yeah. Lynsie, thank you so much
Of course.
for showing up here with me and sharing yourself.
I love having conversations with you. You always ask great questions and you're amazing at holding space for us to be able to feel comfortable just to share what we want to share. And I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. Same here.
Mhm.
And thank you anybody who showed up and watched us today. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to my channel so we can spread the love and the conversation. And if you have any comments, please comment, because once again, conversations about things that really matter. And if you want to hear more about Lynsie's work, I'm going to put a link at the bottom. So check her out and the amazing work that she does in the world. And if you want to hear more about my work, there'll be a link there too, in my coaching program, and how I help women come out of hiding and find the courage to express who they are and bring their unique gifts into the world. And thank you.
Thank you, Abby.